Like so many things, the movie industry has taken a major hit over 2020, but the horror genre has fared better than most. Thanks to its versatility, its resilience, and its many ever-expanding ways to get a feature made, we've seen some absolutely phenomenal horror efforts served up across the year to add at least a semblance of positivity for horror hounds during this most troubling time. In fact, it's been so fruitful that I'm gutted that I could only have 10 picks for this end-of-year wrap-up. The likes of Underwater, Come to Daddy, Impetigore, The Beach House, and way more should have been on here, but they'll have to make do as honourable mentions. So, what could possibly top those big hitters? Well, I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 best horror movies of 2020. Number 10, The Mortuary Collection. It's mad difficult to get an anthology movie right, and for every Creepshow and VHS 2, there's an ABCs of death waiting around the corner. The Mortuary Collection, though, is up there with the very best of the subgenre. It's about a prospective employer prodding and poking at the wonderfully named mortician Montgomery Dark to dish out the most disturbing and twisted details of his time spent dealing with the dead. From there, the movie launches into 4 gruesome tales. Making up the Mortuary Collection, there's the story of a bizarre bathroom discovery, there's a husband forced to make a terrible choice for his dying wife, there's a tit-head jocker getting his comeuppance, and a deranged psychopath on the loose. There is a lot of dark humour to be found here, but this is genuinely effective horror with plenty of gore and smart twists and turns that, for the most part anyway, stop this from ever becoming by the numbers or simply straightforward. It's only let down slightly by an underwhelming first installment. Number 9, The Wolf of Snow Hollow. The Wolf of Snow Hollow is so much more than the sum of its parts. Part subversive werewolf film, part murder mystery, and part Fargo-esque Coen Brothers comedy, Jim Cummings' horror is absolutely brimming with energy and life. The small town setup is something we've kinda seen before in other movies, but Cummings as director, writer, and lead actor keeps it all together through his frazzled performance as a recovering alcoholic sheriff, trying to keep the town and his life together in the midst of some truly horrific murders. I don't want to give too much away here, but unlike a lot of horror comedies, Wolf of Snow Hollow works as both. The comedy never detracts from the severity of the situation, nor is it played in a winking, self-aware way. Instead, it comes out with the extremes and the strong characters at the heart of this surprisingly effective and emotionally resonant genre pick. Number 8, The Stylist. Having made quite the reputation for herself with several stellar short films over the past few years, Jill Gevar-Gizian has this year made her feature film debut with The Stylist, itself a story expanded from the director's 2016 short of the same name. The Stylist centers on Claire, a troubled hairstylist who is forever making envious glances towards the lives of others. She has a penchant for taking her envy to a dangerous level, that level being to scalp people and don their hair as a way to, even briefly, inhabit that person's life. What makes The Stylist stand out from the pack, though, is in how Claire is such a multi-layered character, how the film is beautifully coloured and shot, and how the musical notes of the picture's soundtrack measure and match every beat perfectly. Nahara Townsend, who plays Claire, puts in one of the great genre performances of the year as the Stylist's main act, with her bringing a level of sympathy and delicateness to a character who is capable of such heinous actions. For a debut especially, this is crazy good. Number 7, Swallow. Swallow is one of those horrors that threatens to be nothing more than a premise. A movie about a woman who feels compelled to swallow increasingly dangerous objects sounds like one of those cool ideas that you could come up with at the tail end of a house party after a few too many not cigarettes. But can something like this be stretched out into a feature-length film? Well, Swallow is proof that it absolutely can. This weirdly timeless horror gives you the shocks it promises from the outset, with some absolutely gut-wrenching body horror moments where Haley Bennett's Hunter does indeed swallow some outrageous things. It's more than spectacle though, and there's a genuinely emotional pull at the heart of her troubled character, with the film diving deep into her psychology. The film uses this framing to explore an equally terrifying tale of real-world horror, that of Hunter's perception of the self, her role in her husband's demanding family, and the realities of her own broken parentage. With great performances, a distinct look, and moments that will make you squirm, Swallow should not be overlooked this year. Number 6, Relic. From director Natalie Erika James, Relic is a movie that will stay with you long after the film's 90-minute runtime. While the promotional hook of the film is that of a standard supernatural affair, under the hood of Relic is a story drenched in elements that so many of us will be able to relate to. First and foremost, when you break it down, Relic is a film about seeing a loved one wilt away before your very eyes, which naturally tugs at the heartstrings. At the heart of Relic is Robin Nevin, though, in magnificent form as Edna, with Emily Mortimer and Bella Heathcote likewise on exceptional form as Edna's daughter and granddaughter. We see firsthand the impact that such illnesses have on a family unit. All the while, this supernatural angle envelops the core narrative of the flick. To go further into details of Relic would be unfair on the movie, as this is a flick that should be experienced with as much vagueness and unknown as possible. Safe to say, horror hounds will not be left disappointed by Natalie Erika James's debut, even if the film often serves as an emotional gut punch. Number 5. Possessor. Making a great horror movie is always a tough task, but there's a whole added level of pressure when your father just so happens to be the legendary David Cronenberg. For writer-director Brandon Cronenberg, though, his second feature Possessor is arguably as good as anything his father has ever served up. That's quite the statement, of course, but that really is the case with this chilling sci-fi horror offering. In terms of unique concepts, Possessor has one of the most intriguing premises seen in many a year. That premise revolves around an agency of assassins who, utilizing swanky technology, possesses the body of innocent people in order to carry out their clinical attacks. This flick delivers something completely fresh, utterly stylish, brilliantly brutal, and the film makes your skin crawl in the best possible way. Like, honestly, some of the violence and body horror housed here is unbelievably explicit, but it all serves a point. Combine that with some particularly surreal and striking images from inside the heads of these characters, who themselves are so intriguing, and you have one of the most memorable movies of the year. Number 4, His House. Having first surfaced at the start of the year but recently turning up on Netflix, His House should be on the hit list of anyone with a penchant for horror. Yet another debut feature, His House provides a much needed breath of fresh air for the oft overplayed haunted house concept. Centered on the Majers, a Sudanese family seeking refuge in the United Kingdom, we find a film that, yes, is very much a haunted house feature, but it's also a film that explores the traumas of asylum and the strains of an unhappy marriage. However, while the very real pain of very real situations is spotlighted here, the more elaborate and otherworldly elements of His House provide some spectacular supernatural scares in their own right. This isn't a slow burn all about the allegory at the heart of it, it's a proper creep fest that quickly gets into the scares. Still, it is very much the reality of the movie that strikes such a chord here, brilliantly realised by amazing lead actors, alongside some gut punch reveals that'll have you reeling. Number 3, Saint Maud. It might sound rich coming from someone who lives here, but if the UK can do one thing right, it's usually pretty decent horror movies, and without even a slender slice of hyperbole, this year's Saint Maud could well be one of the greatest British horror films of all time. Of course, that would seem utterly ridiculous to those who've yet to see the movie, but Saint Maud is a haunting, trippy triumph of a film. The crux of the tale here is a Roman Catholic care nurse who becomes obsessed with a former dancer who she now finds herself looking after, with Maud intent to save the corrupt soul of the ailing Amanda. A tough watch at times, this psychological horror ride really is the real deal, make no mistake about it. Saint Maud is destined to become an all-time classic of the genre. Number 2, Horst. Forced to approach filmmaking very differently once the year went to the dogs, director Rob Savage and fellow writers Gemma Hurley and Jed Shepard decided to make the most of the Zoom craze that continues to take over 2020. And by making the most of this situation, that meant filming a terrifying, haunting horror movie using this video platform. Granted, this isn't the first time that the joys of the internet and video calling programs have been utilized for a horror picture, with The Den and Unfriended being two of the earlier offerings to take this approach, but Horst far and away takes this concept to a whole other level of quality, as it tells its tale of a pissed off spirit causing chaos for a bunch of friends reduced to video chats during lockdown. Inventive, authentic, and packing more frights into an hour than most can muster in 90 minutes, Horst is essential viewing for anyone who loves a good supernatural scare. Number 1, The Invisible Man. Having spent years winning praise for his writing work on the Saw and Insidious franchises, Leigh Whannell turned his hand to directing with 2015's Insidious 3. Since then, the Australian has gone on to make himself one of the hottest directors in the genre, thanks to the stunning duo of Upgrade and this year's The Invisible Man. Now, we here at What Culture Horror have been banging on about this movie since March, but trust me, it's for good reason. Utilizing the concept of the Invisible Man character to tell a tale of domestic abuse and shine a spotlight on how traumatic a toxic relationship can be, Whannell's movie is a fascinating way to make the most of an established property and completely reinvent it. Not only should Leigh Whannell receive huge praise for the story he brought to the table here, but there aren't enough awards in the world to do justice to just how stunning a job Elizabeth Moss does as the anchor of the Invisible Man story. It's a horror film that never plays it safe, matching the scares in terms of shock factor, and while I must admit I do have an even softer spot for this one because I saw it in theaters literally days before the whole world shut down, even without that, The Invisible Man absolutely deserves all the praise it's received. So that's our list. Want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are there any horror movies I missed off here that you think deserve to be featured in the top 10? Or have I gotten some of these completely wrong? Let us know, and while you're down in the comments, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't, though, I've been Josh, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.